They said his eyes never closed. Not once in 50 years. The mountain wind carried that rumor like a curse, curling through temple bells that had forgotten their sound. Deep within the old shrine, silence moved heavier than stone. A weary boy climbed the steps, his hands trembling around papers he no longer understood, the ink blurred by tears and frost. Across from him sat the monk, motionless, unblinking, as if time had surrendered in his presence. The boy whispered of failure, of his mind slipping through every lesson like water through fingers. The monk drew one question in sand: do you study to remember, or to awaken? The words glowed in the dim candlelight, then faded beneath the monk's sleeve. Outside, snow began to fall, slow, deliberate, like forgotten thoughts returning to listen. Somewhere between the breath of the wind and the stillness of his gaze, the boy began to understand that learning was not about knowing, but about becoming quiet enough to see. At sunrise, the boy kneels beside a pond so still it seems carved from glass. The monk stands behind him, silent, waiting for the boy to notice that his reflection trembles only when his breath does. The boy whispers that his mind is too loud to learn, that thoughts shout louder than the world. The monk tosses a pebble into the pond. Ripples bloom outward, erasing the sky's reflection, then fade. The surface returns to stillness, perfect again. The boy's eyes widen. He begins to understand that memory is not made from force but from quiet, that focus begins where effort ends. Above them, cranes drift through morning mist, vanishing into the rising sun. The temple bell had not rung in years, yet it moved that night without a touch. The boy woke to its hollow hum rolling through the dark corridors. Each toll felt like a heartbeat he did not own. Following the sound, he found the monk seated beneath the bell, eyes closed, lips murmuring a single phrase. Sound teaches by silence. The boy pressed his hand to the bell's side. The vibration passed through him, like light through glass. In that moment, he felt his distractions scatter, each ring stripping away noise until only attention remained. By twilight, the monk lights a circle of unlit candles. Their wicks glow faintly, though no flame burns. The boy stares in disbelief as warmth touches his face. "How?" he whispers. The monk gestures toward the horizon where the sun has already disappeared. "What you feel," the silence seems to say, "is not heat, but closes his eyes and breathes. The warmth grows brighter within him. For the first time, the burden of study feels lighter, like an ember carried by the wind instead of the hand. That night, the monk tells the boy to sleep inside the hall of wind chimes. The sound will test his stillness, he says. The boy lies down, head on cold stone. The chimes sing without pattern, soft, sharp, endless. He fights to stay awake, to control thought, but the music wraps around him like water. In dreams, he sees the monk's eyes open beneath falling snow, sees the candle flame that burns inside without smoke. When he wakes, dawn spills through the doorway, and the sound of the chimes has stopped. The silence feels alive, as if listening back. Morning light slices through paper walls, painting gold scars across the floor. The boy sits surrounded by scrolls he cannot read, the words twisting and breaking under his gaze. His thoughts chase one another like caged birds, restless, frantic, hungry for meaning. The monk sits nearby, silent as stone, grinding ink slowly in a small bowl. The scratching sound becomes unbearable, echoing every thought the boy tries to suppress. At last he shouts, not at the monk, but at himself, and the room falls still. The monk stops grinding. He lifts his gaze, and the silence that follows feels heavier than the shout itself. If you carry every question, the air seems to whisper, you will never have hands free to hold an answer. Down by the mountain stream, the monk drops a smooth stone into the current. It sinks instantly, ripples breaking around it. The boy watches, confused. Without a word, the monk lifts a dry leaf and sets it gently upon the water. It drifts downstream, catching sunlight as it moves. Both follow gravity, says the silence, but only one understands how to let go. The boy reaches for another stone, heavier this time, and watches it fall faster than his reflection. In that instant, he sees how his mind clings to every failure, dragging him down like weight beneath the surface. He looks up at the monk, and though no words pass between them, he knows this moment will live longer than any lesson. At night, the monk leads the boy into a narrow hall lined with ancient bronze mirrors. Each one holds a reflection, not of the body, but of something deeper. The boy sees himself laughing in one, crying in another, sleeping in the next. These, says the silence, are the faces of thought. As he walks, each reflection turns its gaze toward him. He panics, wanting to flee, but the monk blocks the exit with one raised hand. You cannot outrun your thinking, the air murmurs. The mirrors dim until only one remains bright. The one showing him kneeling before the monk, eyes steady, heart still. The boy understands knowledge begins where fear ends. The monk gives the boy a new task to copy a single phrase 1,000 times without stopping. The boy obeys, ink pooling at his fingertips, letters blurring as exhaustion settles into his bones. Hours pass. Daylight fades. When his hand finally trembles too much to write, he looks down and sees that every page says something different. The phrase has changed subtly each time, its meaning bending with his fatigue. He realizes then that learning is not repetition, but renewal. That mastery is born in the space between breaths. Behind him, the monk nods once, as if seeing the first hint of awakening take root in the cracks of struggle. By the 5th night, the boy's mind trembles under the weight of everything he's learned. The monk instructs him to sit in a courtyard, close his eyes, and forget his name. At first he resists. His thoughts scream in protest, clinging to words, memories, failures. Then, as the wind passes through the temple bells, his thoughts begin to dissolve. The mountain feels vast, the air clear, the silence endless. When he opens his eyes, he sees snow covering his footprints. The monk stands across from him, smiling faintly. In that moment, the boy realizes that forgetting is not loss. It is space, a place where wisdom can finally take root. The monk leads the boy to the edge of a cavern lit only by a single torch. Its flame trembles like a living thing, spilling red light across their faces. The walls are blackened, scorched by years of ritual fire. Look, the silence says, though no words are spoken. The boy stares into the flame till it multiplies, hundreds of reflections flickering in his eyes. He sees memories burn and reshape every night of failure, every fear of being left behind. The monk moves his hand through the fire, unflinching, and the flame does not consume him. The boy reaches out, hesitant, and the warmth that meets his skin feels less like heat and more like recognition. For the first time, he understands that knowledge is not the flame itself, but the courage to stand inside its light. At dawn, the air is filled with smoke from a ritual pyre. The boy kneels, coughing, as the monk scatters ashes into the wind. Each gray fragment seems to whisper something, fragments of forgotten lessons, moments he thought lost. The monk draws a circle in the dirt with the ashes, and within it, the boy sees his own shadow moving, as if alive. Your knowledge must burn, the silence suggests, for only what endures through fire becomes truth. As the wind carries the last of the ash away, the boy feels lighter, emptied yet awake, as though the act of unlearning has carved a new space inside him, a space wide enough for clarity to enter. Night returns with a restless wind. The monk lights a trail of oil along the temple steps, each spark igniting the next in perfect rhythm. The boy follows behind, barefoot, each flame reflecting in his eyes. The fire doesn't burn him, it guides him, marking the path up the mountain. The monk moves ahead, his figure glowing against the darkness. The boy feels his chest tighten, each step heavier than the last, as though walking through the weight of his own fears. But when he reaches the summit, the flames die on their own, leaving only the stars above. The monk turns, nods once, and the boy understands the light he was following was never outside him. When the boy's feet bleed from the climb, the monk stops and tends to his wounds without a word. The sting of cool water feels almost unbearable. The boy tries to hide his tears, ashamed, but the monk presses a hand to his shoulder. Pain? The silence seems to speak. Is only the body's way of remembering presence. The boy breathes, slowly. And the ache begins to change, not vanish, but transform. He feels sharper, alive, grounded. Every nerve that once screamed now listens. In that moment, he realizes the truth to learn is not to escape pain, but to feel it fully until it teaches what comfort never could. At midnight, the monk leads the boy to a cliff where the world falls silent beneath the stars. The air feels thin, sacred, like breath between worlds. The monk points toward the valley below, toward villages glowing faintly in the dark. Everything you see, says the silence, is only what your heart allows. The boy closes his eyes. In that darkness, he sees not the village nor the mountain, but himself, small, trembling, yet unafraid. When he opens his eyes again, the horizon is brighter. Though no sun has risen, he bows deeply to the monk, and for the first time, the monk bows back. It is not a gesture of reward, but recognition, the silent knowing that a new fire has been lit, one that will never fade. For days, the boy studies in silence, his mind steady as still water. But one morning, something changes. The temple feels louder, bells ring harsher, footsteps echo too long. Even the wind sounds impatient. He tries to meditate, but his thoughts swarm like insects. Doubt returns without warning, creeping in through familiar cracks. He wonders if any of this discipline has truly changed him, or if he is simply pretending to be calm. The monk watches from across the hall, unmoving. No correction, no advice, just quiet eyes that see too much. The boy feels anger rise for the first time, sharp and hot. He wants to break the stillness, to prove something. But as he opens his mouth, he realizes the noise was never outside him. It was always his own unfinished heart, demanding to be heard. At dusk, the monk lights a lantern and places it between them. The boy watches his shadow stretch across the temple wall, towering, twisting with every flicker. The monk points to it, not with words, but with silence. The shadow seems alive, breathing when he does, leaning closer when he leans away. It mocks him, moving stronger as his fear grows. The boy clenches his fists, unable to look away. He realizes this darkness is not an enemy, it's his own reflection. The part that studies to win instead of understand, the pride that hides behind humility. When the lantern finally goes out, the shadow vanishes. Yet somehow the room feels lighter, as though confession itself has opened a window inside his soul. The boy's progress grows visible, his memory sharp, his concentration deep. Villagers begin visiting the temple, whispering of the young student who learns faster than the wind. Each compliment feeds a quiet hunger inside him. Each compliment feeds a quiet. He begins to bow less, to listen shorter. The monk says nothing, though the silence grows heavy between them. One evening, when the boy recites a verse with pride in his voice, the monk interrupts, not with words, but with a single clap. The echo rings across the hall like a strike of thunder. The boy falls silent, his heart pounding. Pride breaks softly, like glass under breath. He kneels again, ashamed. The monk closes his eyes, and the wind outside seems to carry forgiveness that words could never hold. That night, the storm arrives. Rain lashes the mountain, lightning cutting through the sky like a blade. The temple doors shudder under the wind's assault. The boy cannot sleep. The sound feels too familiar, too much like his old chaos returning. He steps outside, barefoot, rain soaking his clothes. "Why can't I be free of this?" he cries into the wind. Thunder answers instead. From the shadows, the monk appears, umbrella closed, robes whipping like smoke. He stands silently beside the boy, not offering shelter, not turning away. The storm rages around them, yet his stillness becomes the calm at its center. Slowly, the boy lowers his head, realizing that peace is not the absence of storms, it is standing still within them. By dawn, the storm fades, leaving the temple drenched in silver mist. The boy collapses inside, shaking, body weak, but eyes alive. The monk kneels beside him and places a small cup of water in his trembling hands. "Drink," the silence says. As the boy does, the taste of rain feels like beginning again. His voice breaks not from pain but release. He realizes that the true weight of doubt was never his failure to learn. It was his fear of being unworthy, of learning at all. Tears fall freely. The monk does not comfort him. He only watches, allowing the boy to find his own stillness again. Outside, the first bird of morning sings, clear and unbroken, echoing through the new light. Weeks pass. The storm's scars fade into calm, and the temple hums with quiet purpose. The boy now teaches other villagers who come to seek guidance. He repeats the monk's lessons: stillness, patience, presence. But when he speaks, his voice trembles with both pride and doubt. Each word feels like an echo, not his own. One evening, after his students leave, the monk steps beside him and listens. "Do you teach to share?" the silence asks, "or to be heard?" The question lands heavy. The boy looks out across the courtyard where lamps flicker like forgotten stars. He realizes he is still learning, that teaching is not the end of knowledge, but its mirror, showing where understanding begins to blur. He bows, humbled, and starts again. At dawn, the monk leads the boy to an old wooden bridge spanning a rushing river. The water moves endlessly, sparkling under morning light. Memory, the silence seems to whisper through the current, is a river that never stops flowing. The boy kneels, watching his reflection shatter with each ripple. He recalls every struggle, every night he wanted to give up. And then he sees the same reflection reform again and again. He understands now that forgetting is not the loss of knowledge, but its renewal. The monk tosses a single leaf into the stream. "Watch," the air murmurs. The leaf drifts away, vanishing beneath the horizon. Yet its path remains, carved in memory and motion. When the boy returns to the village, children gather around him. They ask questions, simple and pure. "How do I remember what I read? Why does my mind wander?" He smiles softly, seeing himself in their eyes. He tells them stories, not of struggle, but of stillness. They listen, their laughter carried by the wind like chimes. As the day fades, one child asks, "Will I ever be as wise as you?" The boy pauses, then shakes his head. "Wisdom isn't a finish line," he says quietly. "It's the road you walk every day." In that moment, he feels the monk's presence behind him, though the elder never left the temple. The mountain's silence has followed him, now within his own breath. One evening, while meditating alone, the boy hears laughter from outside, his students gossiping, mocking the simplicity of the monk's ways. For a moment, anger flares again, quick and bright. He wants to defend his master, to correct them, to prove the truth. But as he rises, he remembers the storm, the flame, the mirror, the river. He sits back down. The noise fades into the rhythm of the night. He finally understands what the monk meant when he said, "A lesson that needs to be defended was never truly learned." The quiet becomes profound. He feels peace, not as stillness, but as strength. The power to stay silent when silence says more than words. Night returns with a chill. The boy walks back to the old chamber where it all began. The candle that once burned without fire still sits untouched. He kneels before it, remembering the first question written in sand. Do you study to remember or to awaken? He smiles faintly and exhales. The candle flickers to life. No match, no spark. Only his breath. The flame dances gently, its light warm and alive. Behind him, he senses the monk's presence, not in body, but in air, in memory, in the steady pulse of his own heart. The temple feels the same, yet everything within him has changed. The fire no longer teaches him. It reflects him. At dawn, the monk calls the boy into the main hall. A scroll lies open before them, perfectly blank. The boy waits for instruction, but none comes. The monk gestures for him to read. Confused, the boy leans closer. Nothing, only emptiness stretching from edge to edge. There is nothing written, he whispers. The monk nods. The silence grows thick, almost heavy. Then what do you see? Asks the air itself. The boy's breath slows. In the blankness he begins to see everything. His failures, lessons, fears, triumphs, dissolving into one quiet truth. That wisdom was never on the page, but between the spaces of attention. Monk smiles. Now, the silence says, you are ready to forget everything. The monk leads him through a corridor the boy has never entered before. The doors here are sealed, the walls carved with ancient markings. They stop before one door, plain, unpainted, yet radiating quiet power. The monk motions for him to open it. The boy hesitates, pressing his ear first against the wood. He hears nothing. No wind, no whisper, not even his own pulse. When he slides it open, there is only blackness. The monk steps back and bows deeply. The boy understands this door does not open to another room. It opens inward, into himself. He steps through, and for the first time, silence greets him not as emptiness, but as welcome. Inside the darkness beyond the door, there is no sound. Only faint light pulsing like a heartbeat. The boy walks forward, each step echoing against nothing. When he stops, the light gathers into a soft shape, the outline of the monk, though his master stands nowhere near. Everything you sought was already within, the silence says. The boy kneels, eyes wide with tears, understanding that truth needs no teacher, only witness. The shape dissolves, and the chamber brightens until his sight fades to white. He hears his own breath, steady, peaceful, the rhythm of learning itself. When he opens his eyes, he is standing outside again, the monk before him, smiling as if time never moved. The boy bows deeply before the monk, but the monk bows lower still. You have learned what cannot be taught. The silence murmurs between them. The air is warm with understanding. The monk turns toward the mountains, his robes stirring in the wind. All teachers must vanish. The quiet says, so the lesson can live. The boy watches as the monk walks into the mist, his figure fading with each step, until only the sound of wind remains. The temple bells do not ring. They wait, reverent, as if even the world itself holds its breath. But the boy does not chase after him. He only kneels, eyes closed, and feels the vastness of gratitude fill the space the monk has left behind. Days later, the temple stands empty. The boy, now alone, tends the candles, sweeps the floor, listens to the sound of the wind. Each sound feels sacred, each moment alive. He no longer studies to learn, but to listen. Not to words, but to what lies between them. At dusk, he sits before the same candle where his journey began. Its flame flickers softly, reflected in his steady eyes. When did the silence begin to speak? He wonders. Then he smiles, realizing it always did. He simply learned how to hear it. As night deepens, the mountain hums with quiet life, and the temple's breath joins it. In the stillness, there is no teacher, no student, only understanding. Morning rises with a soft wind that moves like a living memory through the temple. Haru sits alone, watching the horizon glow. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the drip of melting snow, feels familiar, yet new. He senses the monk's presence not as a figure, but as warmth inside the air itself. The temple no longer feels like stone. It breathes. He realizes that nothing truly disappears. Not lessons, not love, not silence. They shift form, returning as wind, echo, reflection. As he inhales, the same wind that once chilled him now carries calm. He whispers into the breeze, "Thank you." And the wind answers by lifting a single petal from the floor, letting it rise toward the sun. In the garden below, villagers gather for morning meditation. Haru leads them, speaking only once. "Breathe as if the mountain listens." The words ripple through the group, and silence takes over. The sound of collective breathing fills the space, steady and soft, a rhythm that joins heartbeats and wind into one. As the session ends, a child opens his eyes and smiles, whispering, "It feels like the world stopped moving." Haru smiles back, realizing that this is what the monk meant. Stillness is not an escape from life, but its purest movement. Around them, dew on leaves glimmers like tiny mirrors, reflecting the first rays of day. As evening descends, Haru walks the mountain path alone, hearing no footsteps but his own. Yet every sound feels alive, each echo returning with harmony, not loneliness. When he stops, he realizes something remarkable. The silence hums, the air sings. He looks up to the sky and light seems to move with sound, as if creation itself is breathing through him. The candle of his youth, the storms, the lessons, all merge into one endless pulse. He laughs softly. Not from joy, but from understanding. Enlightenment is not a moment of brilliance, but the soft recognition that he has always been part of the song. Years pass in a breath. The boy who once sought answers has become the monk others now seek. A young traveler arrives, exhausted, clutching torn papers, eyes wide with desperation. Haru leads him into the hall and offers him tea. The traveler trembles, whispering, "My mind forgets faster than I can learn." Haru smiles. A smile once worn by another. He writes a single question in sand. "Do you study to remember or to awaken?" The traveler stares, lost for words. Outside, snow begins to fall. And for the first time, Haru understands the depth of silence that once guided. The circle is complete, yet it never truly closes. Before sunrise, Haru stands where the mountain meets the clouds. He closes his eyes and breathes. Every lesson, every silence, every flame burns within him, not as memory, but as light. The first light of morning spills over the horizon, washing everything in gold. He bows to the world, not as teacher or monk, but as a soul made whole. The wind answers with the faint ring of a distant bell, the same bell that once taught him to listen. In that sound, he hears it all: the monk's voice, the whisper of study, the echo of peace. When he opens his eyes, the day has already begun, and he smiles, because awakening is not an ending. It is the moment the world begins again.